Hello, I'm Harry Wright. I am a gay autistic comedian. That means I do like big butts and I cannot lie. What you'll be seeing from me tonight are some highlights of a video series I made in the first lockdown all that time ago. It was called Autism 101, and each week I talked about a different aspect of autism. We had some guests on, we had a good time, and yeah, going to be showing you some of the best of. So if you want to find it, you can look up Autism 101 on YouTube or Harry Wright Comedy. I don't have a URL because I'm not famous enough. Or at H Wright Comedy on all social media. Yeah, enjoy it. These were some of the best bits, like I've just been evicted from Big Brother. And yeah, hope you learned something and have a laugh. Cheers to Mark for putting this on. Thanks very much. Oh yeah, by the way, my hair is just as bad in all of the actual clips, and it gets worse through them. So you can like track my mental health through lockdown as the hair goes. At the moment, it's probably a 4 out of 10, and let me know which you think is the worst one. Uh, and yeah, which you think is the best. Quick hint: there's no best. Social distancing is natural for autistic people. Down here in London, TfL has started reopening again. The tubes are starting to slowly run with limited capacity. And I'm pleased that people are keeping safe, but I've been social distancing on the tube for a long time. I've lived here 3 years. I've never wanted to sit within 6 feet of anyone on the tube anyway. On the Bakerloo line, which I go on to get to work, a man gets on some days, dressed as a sea captain from the 1930s, and sings songs on a banjo, and nobody ever gives him any money. I mean, maybe it's just the train conductor on a day off that's bored, but I don't want to sit within 6 feet of that guy, and nor does anyone else. I feel you could practice social distancing yourself, out of pandemic time, just by making yourself so weird that people don't want to come within 2 metres. So that's what I'm going to be doing as soon as I go back to work. Not that it doesn't happen anyway. I'm afraid though, if I make eye contact with somebody on the tube, I'm going to catch normal, and that's not a place I want to be. I think that if I make eye contact with somebody, being neurotypical is going to jump onto me like a virus does. Now, if you don't know what neurotypical means, we'll be exploring it a bit more later. Basically, it's when someone's neurology and how their brain works is, in heavily inverted commas, standard. I don't want to use the word normal because I don't think there is such a thing as normal, or typical for that matter. Although when I was little, and my mum would call me in for my tea, and I'd say, "No, I'm remembering all 213 world flags," she'd go, "Oh, typical." That was roughly when I was diagnosed, by the way. Also, there's 216 world flags. I was such a bad autistic kid. But neurotypicality is when your cognitive issues and your sensory processing issues are maybe a bit easier for you, when you don't necessarily have day-to-day problems with those things that can affect how you function in the world on a daily basis. And autism and related conditions, and sometimes mental health issues as well, are referred to by the collective term neurodiverse, because it's a wonderfully diverse world that we live in, and it's a wonderfully diverse world that our brains could do to us. I mean, I like living in it most of the time, not sure about you. Have quite a bit of fun. Let me show you what you can get away with. First situation is on the tube. So, if you do what I do, and wear a mask that's big and baggy, so that it doesn't clip against your face in a horrible way, you can get confused with a hijacker. It's happened to me. This is what happened. Ticket collector came round, "Tickets please." And I managed to do what I could. I got my water pistol out and went, "This is a hijack." But unfortunately for me, the ticket collector was autistic as well. So he did exactly what I would do in that situation. And he said, "Who the fuck is Jack? Show me your ticket." The second time you might have to wear a mask is in Costa. I don't like wearing a mask in Costa because I can't hear what the staff are saying because they're wearing masks too. And they can't hear me give my order, so I have to shout and it's a bit of a mess. So I've devised my own invention where you can attach a loudspeaker to your mask and you can order as loudly as possible through a loudhailer, so it's impossible to ever get confused. You might sound a bit like a football mum, but that's who lives in my area anyway, so I think I fit in quite nicely. Northwest London, representing the yummy mummies always and forever. Another situation in the barbers. Now this can be a real sensory mess for autistic people. A lot of us hate having our hair cut. The feeling of the clippers and the razor against us as we sort of have our head forced back with someone you don't really know doing it to you, and you're having to make small talk and it's noisy. Oh, it's horrible. That's why I do my own. Like, even though I look like a fashion disaster, I'm prepared to suffer for my art at this point. But again, I've invented my own unique mask. If you put a barber's robe all the way over your body, you don't have to worry. It acts as a mask and as a sensory block, both at the same time. Unfortunately, I did get thrown out of the barber's for doing that, but that's his loss. I have to wear a mask at work at the moment. I'm back in the office. And I found, if you don't want to go to a meeting, put a mask over your eyes, say you missed the email. So here we are. Why didn't you go to a meeting? Sorry, didn't see the email. Can't get away with it as disability discrimination if they try and challenge me on it. I find pubs very noisy and oppressive sometimes, particularly when there's big groups of football fans in, sort of yelling at the TV, a bit drunk. Not really my thing. I like to sit quietly on my own and have a beer in peace and do the crossword because I'm that sad. But again, an invention of my own. This mask attaches onto your headphones, so you can wear your headphones around your head and not have to listen to them. And there's also a straw coming out of it, so you can do a bit for the environment by using a paper straw and also have a moment of peace and quiet at the same time. And we've got some Birmingham City fans in there. Not sure what they're doing in London, but they're definitely the worst of all. Those some common mask-based situations. Let me know if you try those out and how they go for you. In the case of Mika Stauffer, she is a mum from the US who fostered a little autistic boy and then gave him back. Essentially, she decided that she and her husband couldn't cope with him anymore because he was autistic and he was rehomed. Now, a lot of autistic people have been very angry about this, and I understand that, but I think I'm in the middle on it. My mum is a special needs teacher, and I know from her, I can't speak for the US, but I know from her exactly what adoption agencies and what local social services and county social services can be like. The people that work there are under a lot of pressure, and sometimes key information gets withheld before a child is placed. And that was Mika Stauffer's claim, that she wasn't told the little boy was autistic, and it wasn't something she and her husband felt they could cope with because he had behavioural problems. I think we're keen to paint them as the villains, and they definitely are in some ways. They should have handled it better. And the key bad thing they did was they did a YouTube series where they detailed their kind of perfect kind of white corn-fed teeth and picket fence life with this little boy in it, and then he was kind of quietly erased from the series and rubbed out. I understand that they didn't know, but I've just found out the little boy's name was Huxley. If you foster a kid and you're given no information at all, but you're told he's named after one of the most famous science fiction authors of all time, that kid's gonna be autistic. But I feel like a lot of the anger towards Mika Stauffer is mostly in the vlogging community rather than the outside world. Now, I'm not a vlogger, I seem to have become one by mistake, and I still feel very mixed about it. I think we're all fascists, but I don't know how aware people are of what YouTube vloggers are like. Literally all of them autistic. It is 100% autistic men and Zoella. That's the entire demographic. I'm going home to my mum's in a couple of weeks. Hair update, by the way, it is hog wild. It is hog wild. There's no two ways around it. I've had to brush it back like this, like a sort of apprentice funeral usher, aka Lib Dem parish councillor, and he's got a little rat tail at the back because I'm dyspraxic and I'm not going to cut it anymore, which is the most sort of male excuse ever. I'm using my disability fully as a card there to avoid having to cut my hair, and my mum could do it for me, and she's going to have to be alright with that. But I'm leaving it till I go home in a couple of weeks, not shaving it bald, no way. We've all seen what Tommy Robinson fans look like on the news, and I am not voluntarily making myself look like that. I mean, I'd have to put on about 20 stone if I really wanted to look like one, but I feel like a bald head is the first step of that slippery slope, and it's not something I'm prepared to do. But yeah, this week I'm thinking about going home, buying my train tickets has made me think about my childhood. As I've said before, I grew up in a little market town in Yorkshire. It was a very interesting, funny place, and my school was particularly interesting. Now, it was a good school, but there weren't very many high achievers. I'm probably one of the most famous alumni, and I do this, just for a little flavour of what it was like. They had a wall of fame, and one girl got on it because she was on Sun, Sex and Suspicious Parents. What a great achievement. You know, being on Sun, Sex, she wasn't even the main character. But that said, I understand the school's point of view, because Stripper 1 is not bad for your first TV role. So lockdown. Difficult time for sex, difficult time for love, difficult time for all emotions in general. That is for neurotypical people. People like me have always found emotions a bit confusing. We have lots of them. In fact, autistic people are sometimes more emotional than your average person. But we express them in different ways to the rest of you. So, I'm going to show you how I think about love, sex and desire, and all the general horniness you're experiencing in lockdown through my favourite medium, graphs! So this is a graph. Dicks that have been sucked before, during and after lockdown. Now, as you can see, as lockdown started in the UK,
The dick sucked went almost to zero. There's where lockdown was imposed and we were stuck in our houses. Very, very few people sucking any sort of dick at all. Maybe people isolating with their families. Hopefully it was their husband or wife within the family and not another family member. Oh, and then it suddenly trended up. This was me getting the average up. This was when I broke out of lockdown to hook up with a Colombian. Statistics show biggest dicks in the world. The World Health Organization actually did a study. Whatever twink was hired to do that deserves all the knighthoods in the world. Fantastic information for gay men to know. And then, as you can see, we've gone back down to almost zero. Almost zero dicks being sucked in my way at the moment. That is purely because I've cut my own hair and am now completely undesirable to anyone. In fact, I've been informed I look like an EDL member. The thing is that I know there's a niche for people that find that attractive, and I'm desperate, but that's not something I want to play into. Now, people sometimes ask me what sort of people I'm attracted to. You know, what sort of guys do I like? Do I have a ranking system for them? Of course I've got a ranking system. It goes like this. Gay, other, anime, straight. Sorry, not for me. So what you see in here is the national number of hookups had by gay men over different days in lockdown. So you can see during the middle when we were struggling a lot and when the Colombian happened for me, that was when it sort of shot up most, rapidly went down as we all tested positive, and then it started to sort of zigzag ever since. Hopefully we'll be out of lockdown soon and we can get to somewhere in a happy medium. I'm only teasing, of course. Our happy medium is always all the way over there. A big cliche about autistic people is that we're very unemotional. No, we're not. We go through more anxiety and depression than the general population. Our emotions are all over the place. It's just we have a hard time getting them out and expressing them in ways that are understandable. So to demonstrate this, this is what your average person thinks autistic emotions are like. Flat. And this is what, day to day, they're actually like, particularly at the moment. Basically, our emotional state is constantly like an abstract expressionist painting, and that is why we always make the greatest artists. Finally, I've read recently that the average man thinks about sex once every 7 seconds. I know that's not the case for me. I'm too caught up in my own obsessions to think about anything else. Worrying if your obsession is sex, but that's a straight boy thing, I think. But neurotypical men might think about sex every 7 seconds. Here's what the autistic man's brain looks like. Train timetables, sex, and a combination of the two. Never anything else, and we're happy that way. With masks becoming mandatory in shops next week, I wanted to demonstrate to you why this is a good thing for autistic people, and for gays as well. Now, often we enjoy social distancing in our normal life when we're not locked down. We're having a great time at the moment. And we're looking forward to everybody wearing a mask, because it means no one's going to touch us or come near us. And that's fantastic. Don't want any of those heterosexual neurotypical germs on me. But for the gay community, we find that the whole fuss around mask wearing is a bit odd, because it feels very familiar to us. We wear a lot of masks in our own lives. So I've got this for you. We've got a straight boy who hates wearing a mask. We've got a gay boy. Finally, he understands why the logo for Grindr is a mask. If you don't understand that joke, log on to Grindr and look at the logo for yourself. So you can laugh at that joke, but make sure the wife doesn't see. And if she does, just tell her, let's just laugh at that Harry Wright joke. I'm not gay, there's nothing to worry about. And that's definitely my energy. But I've been in love before, I've had relationships before, and I worry like that was it, like that was my one shot. Because often it's very hard to feel down about yourself or feel very anxious when you've got some sort of learning difficulty or special need, and, you know, no one will love you. You know how you've got a friend that's always sort of moaning about men, and you might have a girlfriend that does, or a sister, but because of that negative attitude, she can't get anyone? Like, that's how I feel about myself, and I think it's how a lot of autistic people can feel about ourselves sometimes. But apps have affected my ability to talk to people in real life, because I love them, because it's simple, it's clear, there's no possibility for miscommunication, I don't love small talk in real life. But my ability was already impaired enough, and apps have made it worse. Like, have these really boring conversations like, hey, hi, how are you? Yeah, good, how are you? Yeah, good, how are you? Yeah, good, how are you? And then like 2 days later, I've tried carrying it out in real life. So I'll go around to his letterbox and knock on the door and bark, any pics? Any pics? And then the next day I'm shouting, hi lol, sticky tongue out emoji. And then the next day I'm going up to his window and yelling, have you got Snapchat? His wife and kids getting out a restraining order, peering through the letterbox. Has he gone yet? Should we call the police? These apps aren't conducive to real conversation, is what I'm saying. And I think if you're someone that does have autism, even though we find it very difficult, it's important to try and have real conversations and try and do not necessarily make ourselves integrate, but do our best to try and make things as easy for ourselves as possible so that we can explain to other people what we do and don't find easy and difficult. And sometimes the way apps work can mean that that's harder to do because you have to write a little bit of information about yourself in a bio and that's all people know about you. There's no context to it is what I'm saying, and I think that's super important in forming a relationship. I've had really nice dates from them though, but like it's created a barrier that I don't think would have happened had we met naturally. Like I went on a Tinder date down to the pub and I went to the loo, came back and he was on Grindr. Like, why are you looking for an active downgrade on the date? Like, girl, have some finesse. I mean, obviously we did end up sleeping with each other, but you know, you've got to take what you can get. But I think the problem for neurotypical people is that when they're on dates, their brain can only retain so much information. And like you forget about people once you've been talking to them for a little while, you forget to message them back or forget what they've said about themselves and they get annoyed and it can lead to an awkward conversation. Once my housemate said to me, Harry, are you playing Tinder again? Like, playing? Jess, this isn't a game. This is where I'll meet the love of my life. And then she said, oh right, I only asked because you keep shouting high score every time you get a dick pic. Yeah,